as if deporting good, hardworking immigrants wasn't enough. Revoking temporary protective status for 500,000 Venezuelans wasn't enough.
There's an uproar on The View, and it's one that even the hosts weren't ready for. The View panel is furious. Not just about Donald Trump's tariffs, but about what they've revealed about their own hypocrisy. In a meltdown that has to be seen to be believed, the hosts spent an entire segment twisting the issue of tariffs into yet another attack on America. Let's be real here. This is what they do best. The left thrives on slandering their own country, making every political move seem like a betrayal. But things took an unexpected turn, with none other than Sonny Hostin, the so-called voice of reason, accidentally endorsing RFK Jr. in the process. And how did the audience react to this unintentional endorsement? They booed. Yes, you heard that right. The same audience that claps like trained seals every time an anti-Trump jab is thrown suddenly turned on Sonny for not sticking to the script. Let's start with Ana Navarro, who somehow took Trump's Mexico policy personally. Offended that Trump threatened tariffs on Mexico, she went on a bizarre tangent. She even spun the entire issue into a personal tragedy, complaining about the cost of her tequila rising due to these tariffs. Watch her completely miss the mark with this.
And Canadian citizens showed how they felt about these tariffs at NBA and NHL games over the weekend. Take a look.
These are the people who vote with us in international organizations. These are the people who send soldiers to fight alongside us when we're at war, whether it's in the Middle East or fighting wildfires. These are our friends, and we're treating them like trash, bullying them like... I look at this and think, as if deporting hardworking immigrants wasn't enough, now he's going to tax our tequila and avocados. Is this what we've come to? Not only does Anna ignore the actual issues surrounding immigration and trade, but she also plays into racial stereotypes about her beloved Mexican imports. Let's break this down. The left loves to complain about America's dealings with our neighbors to the south, Mexico and Canada, especially when it doesn't fit their narrative. But here's the truth.
And what makes America the most powerful nation on earth is that we have friends and allies. And it's because we engage in international trade, we don't bully our friends, we show up.
The United States has been carrying the weight of the world for decades. Mexico's migrant crisis is directly fueling the fentanyl epidemic in America, and yet we're constantly running a massive trade deficit with these countries. At some point, enough is enough. The left has been pushing a narrative of compassion for years. But look closely at their policies. They advocate for illegal immigration, knowing full well that it leads to exploitation of migrant workers. Workers who live in terrible conditions, working for slave wages under the threat of deportation. Sound familiar? It's eerily similar to the rhetoric Democrats were pushing in the 1850s about slavery, only now it's migrant workers instead of enslaved people. It's truly sickening how the so-called Party of Compassion has been using vulnerable populations for their own gain, just so they can keep food prices low. They call this progress, but their policies are more harmful than helpful, more racist than they care to admit, and way more morally bankrupt than they ever acknowledge. But wait, there's more. The View hosts didn't stop there. The next part of their meltdown only gets worse. Stay tuned. Here's a little history lesson for you.
Food from us. If it's chock full of the stuff that
Preservatives and
we allow to go.
In 2022, Canada, Mexico, and China together accounted for over 40% of the total U.S. imports. But here's the real kicker. Canada and Mexico are the top buyers of U.S. exports across 72% of all export categories. 72%. That's a massive chunk of U.S. business. So, if Trump imposes tariffs, guess what? That's billions of dollars of problems for American businesses. But don't just take my word for it. Listen to how Sonny Hostin sums it up. If you sell coffee for $5 and the beans coming from Mexico are now $5 more expensive because of tariffs, do you think I'm just going to eat that cost? No. Your coffee just went from $5 to $10. Excuse me, Sonny? Yes, that's right. This is the same Sonny Hostin who claims to be a college-educated lawyer. And now, she's telling us that if your coffee costs $5 and then it costs $10, because of a 25% tariff. That's somehow a simple, direct result of the tariff itself. This is basic economics. And yet, Sunny managed to stumble her way through the most fundamental concept in global trade and still managed to sound completely clueless. But here's the thing about this whole college-educated crowd. They somehow think that a piece of paper makes them smarter than everyone else. They walk around with a superiority complex, as if a degree somehow grants them a pass to dismiss any criticism. And when they parrot things like, Kamala Harris won the educated vote, it's hard not to think of Sunny Hostin as the perfect representation of that phrase, the educated vote. More like the clueless and out-of-touch vote. Now, people often ask me why I even watch The View. And honestly, it's because they present themselves as a credible news source. But the reality is so far from that. This is the kind of rhetoric that the left is hearing and accepting as fact. It's crucial to understand where people are getting their information, so we can either educate those around us or at least push back against this stupidity. In The Art of War, Sun Tzu says, "Know your enemy." Well, this is the enemy, folks. These hosts are pushing propaganda, and people are buying it. If The View were just a feel-good brunch gossip session, I wouldn't waste a second of my time watching it. But these hosts aren't just sipping mimosas and talking nonsense. They're pretending to be serious journalists, discussing real political issues. And if you're watching from the left, you probably think this is a credible source. But all they're doing is brainwashing their audience into believing their skewed version of reality. Now we have Whoopi Goldberg, who really puts the cherry on top with some ancient wisdom about why we're the bad guys for asking our neighbors to be better neighbors. Watch this. Canadian citizens showed how they felt about these tariffs at NBA and NHL games over the weekend. "I've never seen anything like that in my life," Whoopi says, shocked by the response. Even conservative media is warning about the price Americans will pay for this. Everyone's saying this is a bad idea. And there you have it, the left's obsession with making sure everyone likes us. The left needs the world to see America as kind, compassionate, and morally superior, no matter the cost. What they fail to realize is that this mindset is deeply flawed. It's like a high schooler worrying more about what others think than about actually doing what's right. But Whoopi doesn't stop there. She goes on to say that asking Canada and Mexico to step up with fair border security or trade policies might hurt their feelings. But here's the thing. The NHL and NBA are majority American leagues. If they hate us so much, why not go play in their own leagues? Start their own hockey leagues, their own basketball leagues. But of course, that's not what they'll do. Why? Because they still want the money that comes from being in business with America. And here's the reality check. We finally have a president who is standing up for America. After years of being taken advantage of, the world doesn't like it. They want to play the victim, but it's not the United States that's in the wrong here. It's the freeloaders who don't want to chip in. So, let's cut them off like we would with any friend who only sticks around for what they can get from us. Now, Alyssa Farah Griffin, who is usually pretty spot on, gets it wrong. She argues that America's strength comes from not putting tariffs on other countries and by giving foreign aid. But here's where she misses the mark. America's power comes from our alliances, our trade, and our willingness to support other nations, she says. If we stop doing that, we're handing global influence over to China. Well, Alyssa, we've been handing out global influence to China for decades, while we got screwed in the process. It's time to stop. And now, the ultimate bombshell. Sunny Hostin, yet again, drops the mic when she makes an unintentional endorsement of RFK Jr. and gets booed by the audience. Watch the uncomfortable silence as she accidentally says, "Well, maybe RFK Jr. can fix that." And just like that, BM, the audience doesn't know how to react. They've been so conditioned to boo anything resembling support for RFK Jr. or the establishment's critics that they pause for a split second. Then, without thinking, they go straight to booing. It's clear as day. Sunny realizes what she said, and for a moment, you can see panic wash over her. Whoopi shifts uncomfortably in her seat. Joy Behar looks like she's just tasted a sour lemon, and Anna Navarro frantically scans the teleprompter, like she's hoping for some direction on how to handle this. What's next for The View? Will they admit their blind allegiance to the establishment, or will they continue to spin the narrative that the problem lies somewhere else?